This is the Troutbitten podcast.
Troutbitten. Troutbitten? Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Yeah, Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
It's about trout.
Wild trout. This is Troutbitten.
This is the Troutbitten podcast. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Dominic Swantowski. I'm the owner of Troutbitten and the author of troutbitten.com. All right, we're halfway through season 7 of the podcast, and we're ready to tackle a topic that we've all been looking forward to for a long time. This one is about small stream fishing. Specifically, what we love about the places, the fish, the tactics, and the experience of fishing smaller trout water. These are trout streams that are no wider than the dirt road that you drove in on. And for every blue ribbon trout river, for every destination water that is raved about in the guidebooks and makes every angler's bucket list, there are numerous tributaries to these main rivers that are mostly overlooked. We see this everywhere we go. Small streams kind of get no respect. They're mostly an afterthought. They're rarely fished until the waters are high in the main rivers, whereupon the tribs are visited by a couple anglers who want to at least get a few casts in for the day. So those anglers find the nearest trib, park at the first pull-off, gear up, and start fishing by the vehicle. But small stream trips like this are rarely successful, and the joy of fishing these waters is mostly missed because the water, the location, and the experiences are all subpar when you do it that way. Now, I'm exaggerating the point a bit here because there are certainly small stream devotees out there, guys who make narrow mountain water their primary pursuit. And I think all of us here tonight, the Troutbitten crew that I have here with me, have gone through phases of focusing on small streams where we've chosen to hike and fish these narrow waters for the lessons they provide and for the pure enjoyment of the adventure. So in tonight's discussion, we will not try to tackle everything about small stream fishing. That would be a foolish goal because it's far too much for just one podcast. But small stream fly fishing for trout will be a great topic for a multi-part Troutbitten skills series that I'm sure we'll publish someday in the future. And there we can dig into the locations and the tactics and much more. But for this episode, let's just walk through what we love about fishing small streams. How are these fishing experiences valuable? What is so attractive about these places? And why do we keep going back? I'm sure we'll also get into some of the tactics here and a whole lot more too. That's what makes these discussions fun. So let's get this kicked off by introducing my Troutbitten friends. Let's start by welcoming back to the country, back to Pennsylvania, back to our rivers, and back to the podcast, world traveler, Austin Dando.
Hey now.
Hey now.
World traveler. You know, I wasn't a world traveler a couple weeks ago.
Had you had a passport before this?
Yeah, but I never used it.
All right.
I got a passport in like 2016 because I was going to Montana. I thought maybe I'll end up in Canada, so I should get a passport. And then I never went to Canada. So I used it now.
Canada would not have made you a world traveler anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't count. It's still North America.
How'd it go, man?
It was great.
Tell us about the fishing.
Yeah, so the fishing, a fella reached out after my selfish plea for guidance on the podcast.
Yeah.
His name is Bastian. He writes a blog called Alpenforelli, which means alpine trout.
Oh, that's cool.
And Bastian met my wife and I, Paige. He drove 2.5 hours to pick us up at our Airbnb.
No.
Wow.
Took us to a stream, brought us smoked meats, cheeses, breads. He brought us cookies and cakes that his mom baked. They were
Hey now.
I'm telling you, man.
we got there, we ate lunch on the bank, and we just, talked about the streams there and the streams back in Pennsylvania, and just kind of showed us around and answered a bunch of our curiosities about Switzerland. And
how cool.
We didn't end up catching any fish, but it was a great experience and a super, super nice guy that Bastian was.
Did you at least offer him the same hospitality level if he ever visits?
Oh, yeah. I told him.
Okay.
I said, you ever think about coming to the States? And he says, yeah, it's kind of hard to leave here. And, I don't blame him because the scenery in the wilderness is so amazing. But I did bring him some leaders at least.
Oh,
that's really neat. All that because you're a Troutbitten guy.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
And a broken heels? Did you give him a broken heels?
I didn't have any broken heels all along.
He drank it all before he got it.
Jeez, man.
But Switzerland was beautiful, very, very quiet, very quaint. The mountains are massive and you can practically see them no matter where you are. and just very laid back, nice people. And we went to Italy the second week, and it was kind of the opposite. It was much more fast paced. The people they're also very nice, but they're just a little bit more intense. And they have very narrow roads, and they drive very fast, and there's like no laws on the streets, and the food was delicious, but just a little bit more fast paced than Switzerland was for us.
Yeah.
Good change up.
That's cool though.
Well,
Yeah.
welcome back.
Thanks. It's nice to be back. By the last couple of days, I was ready to be back in Pennsylvania.
That's always a good vacation when you get toward the end and you go, I'm kind of ready to go back.
Yeah,
You were there long enough, and you got things you love back home.
exactly. Happy
That's
to
a
be
good
home.
feeling. Yeah, that's a really good feeling. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
At the end of a trip, you're like, I'm ready. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so last night we were going to meet up. My dad and I are camping up on a mountain. You were going to meet us up there. And instead, I got a text from you that said, "Hey, I'm not making it. What'd you say? I took on some water.
Took on some water.
I took on some water. And
Yeah,
I'm
I got
going
a little
home
overconfident.
to get warm."
Me, Bill, and my wife Paige and I were fishing together last night.
Yeah.
And Bill was distracting me as I was crossing a heavy riffle. And
It's Bill's fault. Yeah.
basically just, it's Bill's fault. The side of me took on some water. I didn't go completely under, but it's enough to make me cold by the time the end of the night rolled around.
They'll fall in.
Bill strategically did all the opposite tactics we talked about last week to
Right.
set you up for a slam.
Right. I was going to say, didn't you listen to the podcast last
Well,
week?
he was just like, we were talking about the last time we fell in the water. He said it hadn't been 2 years or something for him.
yeah, he's lying.
Meanwhile, I saw
Whatever.
him slip on the YouTube video, so there's no way in hell that guy hasn't fallen in
I
2
know.
years.
That was his first step into the river.
Well, he's like
was.
8 feet
That's-
tall, so it's harder for him to take on water than it is for me. I'm 5'8".
Meanwhile, to all the audience listening, he texted us about 2 hours ago and said he's tired
Too
from
tired.
fishing. But
He's
I will
tired.
say there's no way in hell that guy didn't eat today in the river if he's too tired to be on the podcast. So he was slipping, sliding, and falling in all day.
That's right.
Oh, man. I guess he's guiding tomorrow. That's a good excuse
Yeah.
to go to bed.
Pretty good reason. Yeah, he's out at camp. He would have had to come in and get an internet signal somewhere. So we'll forgive him. But come on, he falls in more than he's letting
Come
on.
Yeah.
Austin, you broke yourself in right though. You got back to Pennsylvania. Was that your first trip back?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
cool.
day after we got back.
Yep.
So it was
That's
nice.
neat.
Back on the home water.
Nice to have you. Missed you.
Yeah, I missed it too, man.
Missed
All you
your
guys.
expertise on the podcast.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
specialty? What's your specialty, you think?
Oh, my specialty?
Yeah,
bud.
What's your perspective? What do you bring? What's unique to you?
I bring a lot of general knowledge.
Generally non-specific.
I don't know. I like to keep things light.
Mm-hmm.
At the same
Nice.
time, hopefully provide some details.
I feel like you have something useful in every situation.
Very general, every situation.
Good. You have good common sense.
See?
Hey,
All
Right, that's
around
Trevor.
likable.
That's Trevor Smith over there talking.
Likability.
What is he? He's likable. Did you say?
Yeah, I think we established he's the most likable on the podcast.
Right. Who's the least likable?
Ooh,
hey now.
it's probably me.
Old small stream Sally.
It might be
no,
Matt.
no.
It
Matt's
might be Matt.
likable. Matt's really likable. He's got that.
Come on.
That sweet
Based on the
accent.
comments, Dom.
He's
you
the
can-
most offensive.
Yeah.
Matt's the most offensive. Matt's the one who will, well, be the most brave about telling it exactly like it is.
I think Bill gets the most fan love though. when
He
we-
does,
yeah.
right?
right?
So such a strong
Yeah.
personality that way.
He is.
Everybody's like, "Oh, I love that Bill guy." When we did the new trail event or whatever, some of the other stuff we did, people are like, "Oh, Bill Dell's here." I'm like, "Yep, there's Bill Dell."
Fly fishing
Yeah.
show, right? Everybody wanted a
Right.
picture with Bill
That's right.
Yeah.
or something.
Gotta love it.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
funny.
Let me have you guys just say hello then. Let's say hi to Matt Grobe. What's up, bud? Back to the closet.
Just telling it like it is.
There to tell it like it is.
That's
I told
it.
you, Madison, your daughter snuck into the closet last time, and
Yes.
she made the podcast.
I think that's amazing, and I hope this week she already forgot where I'm located on Monday nights.
Yeah, that was a funny moment. I just left it in there. It's funny. Hey, Mr. Trevor, Doctor Trevor.
Howdy, howdy.
He gets mad if you don't address him as Doctor. You guys know that?
Yeah. I'm pretty pretentious.
It's not Mister. It's Doctor. Come on.
Yeah. I make other kids call me that when people bring their children over.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is Mr. Trevor. It's Doctor.
It's Doctor. Thank you.
It's Doctor.
Anything special?
Doctor, Major, Trevor Smith.
That's right. A little bit of everything.
No, I mean, I had a nasal septal repair like a week and a half ago.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's why you weren't here last week.
that's why I wasn't here. I had bandages over my face, and if I talked, I started to bleed. So I was like, well,
That would have been
probably sit
awesome.
out one. Yeah, I know.
I
Would
know.
you do that yourself on the ping pong table?
Here's your specialty, Austin. Good job.
Well, it started on the ping pong table, but it ended up in the hospital. No, everything went well. Today was my first day back to work, so that wore me out a little bit, getting back in the routine, but it was good. Feeling better. Yeah.
There you go.
You look
Yeah.
good.
Hey, you shoot a turkey yet?
No, I did not. I haven't even been out turkey hunting. Isn't that crazy? Been tying a lot of these.
Nice.
Pendragon.
Yeah.
That's right. He just held up a Pendragon, which many people ask me for that pattern, Trevor. And I always hand them off to you because I'm like, it's not my pattern. I don't really want to give away the
For sure.
secrets.
Yeah, Josh and I figure we'll eventually do a video just so that it's out there. It's easier than telling people individually about it.
I'm sure they get in touch with you too.
Yeah.
Because I hand them off to you.
That's okay. Yeah, I don't get on for whoever messages me. I get on Instagram about once a month, so I often see like the last month of messages and then respond to a couple of them. So I'm not going to be your most reliable guy. Josh is probably better at it.
A little bit, but not necessarily. He's a little busy too. We should say Josh isn't here tonight because he just had
Numero
Tess
4.
Oakley.
4?
Yep.
Yeah.
Tess Oakley Darling.
Darling. Yep.
Beautiful.
What? She's like 24 hours old now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he's got his hands full.
Yeah, literally.
Because let's remember, he has already 3 other kids.
Right.
all quite young.
Good man.
He's a
That's
brave
right.
man.
How about it?
Whew. Yeah.
All right, then. Hey, let's move into the listener question. I have another one that kind of sets up this discussion pretty well. In truth, this is another question that bumped the topic up to the top of our list for episodes. It just seemed like a good time to talk about small stream fishing. And Sam Allworth from Lyons Falls, New York, sent in this question through email. Trevor, you're our designated reader.
Yeah.
And you want to read this one, please?
I do. Hello, Dominic. Thanks for all the great videos, podcasts, and articles. I discovered your whole project through the podcast, and I'm amazed at the depth of the work you're providing. Please thank all of your partners for me as well. After searching through your material, there's one question I haven't been able to find your opinion on. I'm a small stream aficionado, focusing mostly on small mountain streams of upper New York. I've taken to fly fishing these streams exclusively, but I find that the casting can be very difficult, especially in the smallest valleys. What's your advice for tight quarters casting? And are there some streams that are just so closed in that you won't fish them? I'm submitting this question officially for your podcast crew. Sam Allworth. Discuss.
Discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, small stream stuff, when it gets tight quarters like that and the casting becomes a issue, bow and arrow cast, I find myself using quite a bit because it eliminates the back cast piece.
Yeah.
I think that's a really effective one if you're going to venture out into mountain streams in the East Coast. And, you know, I find myself using it a little bit less out west because our streams are a little bit more open.
Yeah.
But bow and arrow cast is a must. And if it's really tight, the type of fishing you do, you know, should be considered. So if it's really tight, I'll actually throw a streamer on.
Yeah.
And
Matt might throw a streamer.
that's the only time I fish streamers. Yeah, no, out of a boat and in
For
a
brook
small
trout.
stream. And sometimes it's just the best tactic, right? Because you're not worried about the flotation of a dry fly or a proper drift with the nymphs. You can kind of just let that streamer drift down in a plunge pool and then strip it back and have the right angle for your rod to make that work appropriately. So
Nice.
That's my recommendations.
Bow and arrow cast is a good recommendation there. People make way too much of that. Like it's not hard. It's not at all hard.
No.
And people make just a really big deal out of it. Yeah, they complicate it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I will say, I mean, that's a good problem solver. For me, it's a once in a while thing. If I find a stream that is so choked with brush that I have to do one bow and arrow cast after another, and I can't actually cast, then for me, much of the enjoyment is out of it. Bow and arrow casts are good, problem solvers, but it takes a minute, not a full minute, but it takes probably about 30 seconds to set up for the next bow and arrow cast, or at least 20 seconds, bring it in again, and you understand. And so, yeah, if it's that tight, and that's my answer to Sam, then I'd prefer to not fish it. I will say you'll find plenty of areas of a stream that are really tight, and then you keep walking upstream and you find, it really opens up here. You're out of the floodplain or whatever. And so don't give up on it. If the first place you park at and walk in perhaps is, this is really tight, we'll keep exploring.
Right. Yeah, it's a interestingly timed question as well for me, because the other day I was just watching Joe Humphrey's video. I think it's casting approach to dry fly tactics. Mm-hmm. And the last third of the video, especially, he's on small brook trout streams, and he's teaching about how to cast and make presentations within really tightly choked streams. And the first thing he emphasizes is don't be afraid of hanging up. Don't be afraid of making the cast. The worst thing you're going to do is lose a fly or get stuck in the brush. But the importance of short casts. Mm-hmm. But also with the bow and arrow cast, he was doing, the same way he retrieves line when he's nymphing with his figure 8 in his hand. Yeah. Yep. He does the same thing when he makes figure 8 casts for distance. So he's, cramped up between all the branches. He's got his head stuck between one. And he's retrieving that line. His whole leader all the way up until the beginning of this fly line, brings it all the way back, lets it all the way go straight out in front of him. And the whole leader and the whole fly line goes out. I remember that. I do my best to replicate that, but like you said, it's not the most impossible thing in the world. It does get a little bit of, mystery around it or lore around it, but it's not that difficult, and it's a great way to get casts in tight spaces.
Right on. Tactical Fly Fisher was founded by Fly Fishing Team USA angler Devin Olson to bring anglers cutting-edge gear and techniques from the international competitive fly fishing scene. Tactical Fly Fisher's aim is to help you improve your angling ability so you can have more fun on the water. Whether you need some flies, fly tying equipment, or a new rod or reel, they've got you covered. Head on over to tacticalflyfisher.com and use the code TBPOD10, that's TBPOD10, to get 10% off flies, fly tying supplies, or terminal tackle. For over a decade, Smith Creek has provided innovative, high-quality fly fishing accessories designed to put your gear in easy reach, free up your hands, and keep our waters clean. For 2023, check out the all-new patented tippet holder. Each unit is individually machined from billet aluminum and anodized in 2 eye-catching colors. They hold up to 5 tippet spools with a spring-loaded plunger that is quick and easy to use, keeping your tippet spools right where you need them. Also, the brand new Rod Clip Plus comes with an improved 304 steel pin, plus a carabiner clip, giving you 2 ways to attach it. All Smith Creek products are built guide tough and backed by solid customer service. To learn more about Smith Creek products, visit their website at smithcreek.co.
For you guys, does the length of the fly rod you like for small streams play into your casting style at all?
Sure.
Yeah, I have a specific rod I carry for stream. Mine's a 7-foot, 9-inch 3-weight. And that's bendy and flexy, and I just really enjoy
you had named it Bendy.
Well, you just did.
That's Bendy.
Old Bendy.
One over there is Flexi.
Old Bendy comes with me,
Flexi.
and then I got an 8-foot 4-weight, and we call it Flexi.
Yeah, I have a 6.5-foot 3-weight that I like to fish too. It's a
6.5
fiberglass rod. Yeah,
no kidding.
For the really small stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think it does matter. You get into really, really tight stuff. It isn't small necessarily. I think we mean when it's real tight. And I find that as the years go on, I actually keep fishing longer and longer rods in tight cover. I feel like if you know where the tip is, like you can handle it. That said, there's a certain point where it's so tight, that if you really want to do any casting, you'll do better with a shorter rod. My first rod was a 7-foot Redington Red Start. Yeah, 7, not even 7.5. And I used that for a very long time. The reason I got it is because I grew up fishing really small streams, and then I grew into fly fishing the same way. So Trevor, I think the shorter rods can really benefit you, especially if you're kind of just getting into small stream stuff.
Sure.
What do you think? What do you use? What's your small stream go-to?
Yeah, I have an old Fenwick fly rod. I think it officially says it's a 4-weight, but it's super loose.
Oh, yeah.
It's fiberglass.
Yeah.
And that's the one I've always used.
Is it maroon?
It actually is black and maroon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have the same one,
Yeah.
Austin?
My dad has that rod. I think everybody
Really?
in the 70s and 80s bought that rod.
Huh. Weren't quite as many options back then, huh?
Yeah, it was the standard.
Yeah, that was my first fly rod.
The other gear thing I'd say to Sam is I like to keep my leader short.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about, long nymphing leaders, and then even my favorite George Harvey dry fly leader is about 10, 12, 14, 16 feet after you put the tippet on there and everything. I don't want to use that in a stream that's pretty tight, and I will chop it down and whatever. I have small stream leaders built hand tied to, because you can't really, that's another point. You can't buy the leader that I want, small enough with the taper that I want. I mean, short enough with the taper that I want.
Yeah.
You can't buy it in the stores. So whatever, I have small stream leaders tied up, and they are anywhere from 6.5 to maybe 8.5, maybe 9 feet. And that's again after the tippet's on there. But yeah, I'll fish like a 6.5 foot leader sometimes.
And talk me through that, because is that primarily because you don't want the fly line inside your guides pulling back on you because you can't lay enough line out on the water?
No,
or is that...
That's not
yeah.
it really, no. But yeah, I'm happy to talk you through it. I really love fishing dries. And we'll probably get more into this a little bit later. For me, I want to be able to cast dries on a small stream. And if it's that tight, I bet I can catch them on dries. But I have to have the fly line punching through. I feel like I can. I can make nice tight loops and get through some really tight quarters.
Yeah.
But I need the fly line then to
be doing the work.
Yeah, and make the tightest loops possible then with that fly line. That'll carry through a shorter leader. It just makes sense, right? And you'll get full turnover when you want it, but almost all the time with a leader that short. And then you could do something. You're not going to get as great of a drag-free drift, of course, but that's the trade-off. You can put the fly right where you want it. Yeah.
And to piggyback on that, I'm in the exact same boat with Dom's setup with that 6 feet is kind of my jam. But the other thing is your target's small. So there's really no need to have a long leader when you're really just hitting these small pockets. And I'm generalizing most of these small streams as tumbling brooks, or, your pocket water's heavy. I mean, you don't need that long leader to lay out because there's not a ton of, runs, right? And it's safe to say most of them are a lot of pocket water. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Right on. And you're saying you're not aiming for really long drifts, short drifts, tight targets, all that.
Yep.
Yeah, you're not going to there's no room to get a 20-foot drift. It's like 5-10 feet, boom, you're out of there.
I think we covered it.
I like that. That's good.
Is there any stream so small you won't fish it, though?
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That's the last part of the question. What about you, Austin?
I mean, going back to what you said, oftentimes if you keep walking upstream, it'll open up once in a while. But if it's one of those creeks that, if it's 2 foot wide and it never opens up, I'm probably not going to spend any time on it because I'm going to be frustrated.
Yeah.
And if I'm frustrated, I'm probably not having fun. So that's not what I want my fishing experience to be like.
Yeah. And for me, it's not about how wide it is, but again, how much cover there is to get through. I have.
Yeah, there you go.
I think probably 2 foot wide, very, very top of the headwaters, And I've found it fun to be like, how far up here can I find fish? And usually it's as far up as you can go.
Yeah, that's a good distinction, what the coverage is versus if it's wide open, then it's not going to be nearly the same.
Yeah.
No, I think you covered that well.
All right, guys, let's move into it. Here's our topic then. And again, this dovetails right into it. But what do you guys love about small stream fishing? What do you think? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to start with? What do you love about it?
I'll jump in first. What I love about small stream fishing, I think it takes me back to a time where I was just getting into fishing in southwestern Pennsylvania, where I grew up, where you had a lot of that artificial setup fishing and stocking, and that's great, right? We've talked about the benefits of that, but for me to escape to a truly wild watershed where I was growing up led me to the wilderness and the headwaters where the brook trout kind of have been pushed into a small area. Yeah. And I sought after that wild experience, right? Where you're catching native fish on hand-tied patterns. And for some reason that was enough for me to then let it go nuts, and my desire and passion for the sport just took off and led me to go to college at Penn State because I wanted to fish, and the rest is history. But it's that very wild and native opportunity. That's what I loved about small stream fishing and continue to love.
Yeah. I'm pretty similar to you, Grove. I grew up in northwestern PA, and there's a lot of small stream fishing up there. And it was really kind of out of my love for like exploration and discovery that I think I first went out and fished small streams. And I grew up hunting, and that also felt more like hunting to me, where you were walking into places where you could feel like nobody else had walked in a long time. And you would discover a stream or discover fish in that stream and feel legitimately like nobody's ever seen this fish before. I'm the first, and so that purity of experience was really, it still kind of has me, and I think it's so different than the bigger waters that we fish that are heavily fished by other fishermen. There's certainly its own there are plenty of discoveries to be had on those as well, but it's such a different feeling.
I love that.
Yeah. Small stream fishing for me was and has been sort of always a chance to reset. So whether it be in my own just regular fishing patterns, or if life feels really hectic, or just busyness, the small streams allow some sort of escape that forces me to slow down. I can't be in a really tight stream and just fly through it and wade up through it and not pay attention and make mistakes. I remember there was a time when I was at Penn State, I worked in the local fly shop, and I kind of started to get burnt out a little bit because I would fish during the week. I know all my friends were fishermen, and then I'd work on the fly shop in the weekends, and I'm just tired of the same old thing over and over. And I think it was you, Dom, who actually sent me some ideas of places to go up north and escape and fish these small streams. And I did that for a little while, and it was like, breath of fresh air. There's no one else around here. There's no expectations. There's no nothing except me in the wilderness, and a chance to, kind of breathe out. And that sort of has always carried through.
Man, that's great. Everything cool. You guys said, I mean, I feel like I'm right there with you. Trevor, you said about almost the novelty of it, or the uniqueness of it. Like maybe nobody has ever fished over these fish right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it got me to thinking too of how many times I've been up, and we're talking often miles away from even the dirt road you parked on. And I've run into like logging communities, old like foundations and stuff like that. The remnants of our logging industry, I should say, right? And just all kinds of very unique things that are still there. It's like the history of the land is still there, especially in these valleys. Because of course, a lot of, logging industry and other things, we're right along the streams. And you'll find, again, remnants of people affecting the land and obviously living on the land. And you really feel like, wow, nobody's seen this for a while. And maybe a few hunters. Of course, the further back you go and the deeper you go into the woods, the more you see that. And for me, like you said, Trevor, I really value that. I always have. Now I'm old enough to understand why I like things, and I've been living long enough that I've considered about what I like, what I don't, and everything. But when I was younger, I don't know that I thought about it that much. I just knew that it gave me the feeling. Small stream fishing gave me the feeling that all of you guys are talking about, and it still does.
100%.
Those are the main things. I think what you guys brought up. Those are the main reasons I love it.
I think it's special in the Northeast too, because we live in a relatively populated part of the country. And I think finding those kind of explorations and those senses of kind of, almost frontiersmanship, or just kind of unique and special, and to be able to combine that with fishing. I'd love to walk onto some of our bigger streams and feel like, or rivers, and feel like, gosh, I'm the first guy that discovered this. The feeling would be awesome,
I know.
But it's just not the reality.
Yeah.
But Grove, I was kind of curious, like in comparison to because you've fished both here and the West, obviously, in small streams in both locations. Do you still feel that sense out there? Is there, enough pressure on your bigger waterways that you still feel like that exploration can happen in small stream
yeah.
settings. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and especially out here, man, there's so much wilderness.
It's almost endless.
I mean, it's you can hike for 6 straight hours or 10 hours and find water, which the land is, endless wilderness, and it's not bisected by roads, right? So it's almost on steroids, right?
Incredible.
And when you really look at a map, it truly is endless, right? And we're fortunate to have cold water, and we don't have the population growth. So a lot of the headwaters are so pristine. They all flourish with wild trout and native trout. And I would say it's like back home, but on steroids. There's a lot of opportunity. Now, the one thing I will say is there's a lot of opportunity in a short amount of time, because most of those waters, and I would tell you guys, my favorite thing to do out here is to wet wade on small streams and explore, because there are so many. They're slightly bigger than back home, and they have a little bit better casting conditions on average, but you got 8 weeks to do it, right? I mean, Dom, you mentioned the headwaters, and when the water's high on the main river, you can go to the tribs, I think, in the intro. But out here, really the tribs are raging right now, and they're not going to come down. There's only this sweet spot of maybe the end of June till they freeze in mid-October that you can really get after them, and then they're locked up in ice.
No kidding. That's a good point.
So it almost adds to the excitement for me in a way, because I know they're off limits for most of the year, because right now they're chock full of mud. Yeah, it's cool, but it is cool. And then
too bad almost. Yeah.
And it's too bad. But having said that, it's a small window, right? And so I find myself out in those mountain streams more and more the longer I'm out here, because I just really enjoy that solitude, that exploration. What Dom was talking about with the short leader and that small target that I spoke about with the pocket water, give me a stimulator and I'll go all day in that stuff. And I'll catch, I tell people all the time, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but most of the trout, I think it's safe to say, on average, are smaller than the big river. And there's always those exceptions, and we've proven that there's some really big fish in places at times, but on average, they're smaller. And when you look at the industry today, and it's crowded out there, I think we see it from coast to coast. It's almost like it brings you back to why you got into the sport. And if you can't appreciate catching a 6-inch fish on a bushy dry fly, well, I was joking. I mean, you shouldn't be fishing, man. Yeah. Right. And that's, that's fun. That's a good time.
Yeah.
That's why I fell in love with the sport. And I always try to bring myself back to that in the summer months.
Imagine if someone put as much time, thought, and effort into designing fishing apparel as you put into finding fish. Well, someone did. Squala Fly Fishing builds waders, jackets, shirts, and pants so well designed, dependable, and comfortable, you hardly notice them. When you're wearing Squala, you're never hot or wet or unreasonably cold, so you can focus on more important things, like fishing. They don't make gear for everybody. They make gear for us, the like-minded few, serious anglers who don't take themselves too seriously. Check them out at squalafishing.com. Then use the code Troutbitten10, that's the number 10, for 10% off your first order from Squala. As fly anglers and tyers, we understand the value of having the right tool for the job. AvidMax.com offers over 20,000 products and the knowledge to help you find the right tool for your job, whether that be at the tying bench or on the water. Listeners of the Troutbitten podcast receive a special one-time discount code at AvidMax.com. Enter the code TB10 at checkout on full-priced items to save 10% off your order. Orders over $25 ship for free, so you can put more gas in your tank or beer in your cooler. For all things fly fishing and tying, elevate your game with AvidMax.
Grobe, you're talking about solitude. Now, in the past, you told me stories about you'll actually hike up some small streams in order to get into other small streams, to get into other small streams, to not trespass or get out of the water. That's pretty extreme in terms of solitude and hiking up small streams. Is that something you still do?
Yeah. And that's one of the positives about the stream access law in Montana. I mean,
Yeah.
you can just go, right? You don't have to think twice about where you're headed. So if you look at a map and you have a legit access, I've hiked up 4 miles in the river bottom before, wading upstream to get into a trib, to wade up a mile to hit another trib. And I'm not joking. I mean,
It's
and it's
amazing,
exhausting,
Yeah.
and it's, it's not for everybody. And I, quite honest, I might do it once or twice a year.
Yeah.
And I'm very selective on who I'll mention, those experiences to. It's people that would appreciate it, and not abuse it and do it once a year. But that opportunity exists. And look, I think it could exist, anywhere, right? If you look hard enough, and you look at a trib, all the tribs have tribs, and
Right.
you can have that experience if you want it, but there's always that fear of missing out at times, right? Especially out here when you have that small window to fish those mountain creeks. Are you going to pass up and down the Madison River? And I get it. That's hard. That's a hard pass when it's in its prime and you're in there eating dry flies. But I have the benefit to live here, right? And so, and you guys get it. Dom, you moved to, it probably took a while for you to get off those famous waters and start exploring, right?
Actually did it the opposite. You guys know a little bit of my history, and I was gone for about a year. But when I came, for 3 years, really. When I came back, I was so into the small stream fishing, Matt, that I just kept going north of here.
It's awesome.
And fishing all the main rivers that are up there, and then all the tributaries, And I had so much history there. I had my dog, and I was exploring. I had a Nissan Xterra. I would often sleep in the back of it and everything. I loved that experience so much, just having the topo map and the Dwight Landis Trout Streams of Pennsylvania book. And I've talked about that.
We love that book.
Yeah. But that's actually what I did for almost the first whole year that I was here. I hardly touched our big 4 limestoners.
Sure.
It's kind of very backwards, I guess, from what most people would do, but I was into it. I loved that solitude, everything we've talked about, that purity of experience. And you guys know me, when I'm really focused on one thing, I just kind of keep doing it until I kind of get tired of it, or I feel like, okay, I learned a lot from that. You never learn everything, but I think I kind of was like, okay, I really, what I learned the most? I learned all these streams and all these access areas and all these places that I was like, oh, these are great streams. And now I just fall back on that knowledge. Back then in 2003, I didn't have I didn't have kids and all the responsibilities that I do now. Right. So I honestly do not have time just to explore. We got baseball and I got 2 kids, obviously into a bunch of stuff and the business and everything. I don't have time. I don't right now in my life have time to explore small streams the way I'd love to. But I can fall back on all of the experiences. I took some notes, but I don't even need those notes. I know I could rattle off a bunch of my favorites right now, and I could be there in an hour and a half. Point this out. We're talking about solitude and hiking in and this purity of experience kind of. Our local rivers have tributaries, but many of them run right beside a road or, well, that's what it usually is. It's right beside a road. One of them goes right up through a factory, or an old factory. And that's not what I'm looking for when I fish small streams. And I have fished all of those, like I know you guys have too. And it's not that it's a bad experience, but it's not what I'm looking for. When I fish a small stream, I want to do what we're talking about. And I have found a lot of that in the state forest lands and things like that. And you can hike and just go for a while and then stop and fish.
Yep. That gave me chills listening to you talk about the bed, just camping in the back of your car. And that's I'm in the same, different, but same stage of life with kids. And, it becomes more of a challenge to do that. And I find myself annually been going out into Yellowstone for 2 nights, 3 days to kind of like fill my void of that true wilderness experience. And, everybody thinks about the famous rivers in the park, but if you really pull up your topo map and look at that, and that's, is there anything more there's pristine than Yellowstone National Park in its backcountry? And it's true wilderness. And you can look at blue lines all through there and go nuts on backpacking. And you have to backpack in designated areas, but I've been making that a habit the last 3 years. I would love to, that'd be a fun trip for all of us one day to just get out and do something with that in mind and escape. And that would be pretty cool.
I have people on a fairly regular basis ask me why I don't write more about small stream fishing or why we haven't talked about it yet or we haven't done videos and stuff. And I've thought about that. And I guess there are two reasons. First of all, like I said, I don't do it as much as I used to, and I will do it in my off seasons. However, in the last few summers, it's been very low and clear for like 3 years, really low clear conditions that are not ideal for these small stream, for this small stream fishing. But the other thing is, I'm not sure I want to share it, and it's I'm out there for solitude. I don't want to film, I'm out there for that, what we're talking about. And that's when I'm out there, I don't want to be thinking about, I need to get this shot or I don't take pictures of the fish when I'm out there, I don't know.
It's interesting to hear. Yeah.
And here we are talking about it. I'm glad to talk about it, and I've told you guys before, I kind of have a series started that I call the Blue Liners Bible, which will be on Troutbitten someday. I don't know when, maybe make a book out of it and everything, but I'm happy to share. I think it's a good name. Happy to share these thoughts and these things, but I hope people will receive it the right way. I don't want,
Sure.
I'm going to tell you, you can go out there and catch 50 brook trout a day. You want to catch 50? Go ahead. Right? A lot of times they're pretty willing fish, but you shouldn't be out there for numbers. Right. And I hesitate to even say that because it is not about that. And I just, again, I would hope people would kind of receive that information the right way. That's all.
I think I'd much rather give out a big fish spot than I would my solitude, fairly good dry fly fishing trib.
Yeah.
Just because of what you said, Dom. It's almost like I tell people, it's like you got to earn your right to this river. Or I say river, I mean stream, right? Yeah. It's like, that's when I draw the line. I'm like, this one you got to find on your own. It's meant to be discovered. Yes. It's not meant to be a handout. And, there's spots I have out here that, I'll keep close to my chest and all for a 10-inch cutthroat.
Grove family blood.
It's just, that's right.
That's cool.
Madison will know.
Well, I like hearing you guys talk through that perspective because I do think that it's a little bit the antithesis of some of and I don't want to generalize too badly, but of some social media fishing culture, which is very much more driven by numbers or the impressive size or
big trout,
just kind of big fish. And so I think it's cool to hear you talk about the value, even in a value hierarchy that puts that small stream experience to the forefront in your minds, because I think it's cool. And I think it really says something about you guys as fishermen and kind of being in it for the right reasons. And it's no hit on anybody who's never small stream fished, but I just think your priorities seem to be in the right place.
If you took 10 anglers, Trevor, and put them in a small stream situation and let them fish for the day, I honestly I think 7 of them wouldn't enjoy it. Personally, I mean, if they get frustrated with the casting, the tight quarters, the fish are small. So because of that, I think it's a small percentage of folks that can find what we're talking about here and enjoy it, right? Which, I mean, you're not appealing to the masses when you're talking about small stream fishing.
That's right.
Sure. It's a good point.
So I've heard people say that small streams don't get the same attention as their big brother rivers, right? Because anglers are secretive. And here we're kind of talking, like Matt, you said, well, I'm not telling anybody, the name of my favorite, my favorite small stream. But do you guys think it's that? Do you think that's why these small rivers don't get the attention? It's because people don't talk about them? Or do you think it's something else? And I think we acknowledge it is also because people have a difficult time fishing them. Basically, why aren't small streams more well known as sort of these go-to destinations?
I think they get overlooked.
Go ahead.
Because you go back to the Big Brother stream, and the Big Brother stream is the one that the books are written about, and everybody's going to, and the accesses are full. And it's inconvenient to go ahead and say, oh, I drove all the way out here to get to this main river.
Yeah.
And instead of doing this thing that I planned in my head for the last couple of weeks, I'm going to go up this small, inconvenient, tightly brush strewn stream and try to make my way through that. I also don't think that there's so many small streams with brook trout in them compared to big name rivers that the proportion or the ratio of popularity is just completely askew. So it gives people the opportunity to spread out and discover one thing at a time and give you the chance a lower chance of running into another angler just because of the sheer number of small streams going into one main river.
There you go. Yeah.
So I don't know, that has to play a big factor.
It's hard for like just one to become famous in a way.
Yeah.
We should say too, like you mentioned brook trout. I said brook trout. We catch a lot of wild browns, small or larger wild browns in these streams. And of course, cutties, out west.
Yep.
Whatever, right? But usually it's what you brought up from the beginning, Matt, like wild fish, sometimes native fish. It's a big deal.
It's interesting. It's interesting to find where they're residing, right? They're up against climate issues, that have shrunk their home range for the past, 30, 40 years. And you look at their home ranges and they're shrinking on maps. For me, it's always been interesting to see where they've, relocated to and where they're flourishing. And oftentimes it's in the most healthy watersheds with the best water. I enjoy looking for that, whether it's back in Pennsylvania or out west. I mean, even the cutthroat have been on the same trajectory as the eastern brook trout. It's just the water here and the elevation is colder and higher, so it's prolonged what inevitably will occur, right? And they're in more water currently, but that's changing, and that can change every year, and that to me, it's like, wow, man, I'm catching that native fish, and who knows how long they'll be around? We don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, and we love, I'm saying I love my brown, like I love brown trout, I love rainbow trout,
right.
But when I'm in the mood, I want to catch native fish, whether that's a brook trout or a cutthroat trout.
Yeah.
Or whitefish.
I leave those for sloop.
Oh, come on.
Hey, now. Trevor, you have something?
No, I mean, I was going to talk a little bit just about some of the less sexy parts of small stream fishing, which are just that, you're typically fishing in foliage covered areas, and so for some people that really dislike or kind of don't enjoy the summer heat, a small stream experience can be a way to get away from that a little bit.
There you go.
Or, and there are even locations where you can start the morning on a bigger stream and then spend the hot heat of the day working up into kind of a remote area.
More shade too.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think keeping your mind open to those kind of situations and experiences, I think we all talked a little bit about how some of the best small streams might be pretty far away from our bigger rivers, but there are also a fair number of them that are fishable right from the bigger main stem right up into a tributary.
Yeah.
And you can spend an entire afternoon fishing those. And honestly, in the summertime when the thermal pressures push some of the fish out of our larger waterways, you can find good and even outsized fish in those small streams taking thermal refuge.
Good point.
Yeah, and can I bring up a question to the crew? I mean, do you guys feel like that's inappropriate at that time? Because that's always a thing, to target those fish in thermal refuge areas. I have no issue with it as long as it's not at the mouth and they're stacked at the mouth. If they penetrate the system, I think they're all fair game, and a smart angler would seek that for success, right?
Yeah, 100%. And what are you throwing it up against? Like some guy that's going to catch them in 70-degree water and potentially kill that fish, versus he's sitting in 60-degree small stream, and it's that fish is going to survive that experience much more easily. So I think it's it's both more ethical. I don't think, like you said, Grobe, I don't think it's very fun to catch a bunch of fish that are stacked up at a spring. I just don't particularly enjoy that. I don't know that I would go as far as to say that it's unethical, but it doesn't seem very sporting for sure.
Yeah. Basically, if the fish are in distress at all, I feel like it's not sporting, or it is.
Yeah.
It's unethical. And I'm not interested in doing that. But as soon as like you said, Matt, as soon as they get up in there and they spread out, and man, I'm thinking of some great areas, again, north of here, where every year the fishing can be fantastic up in those tribs. Like I said, the last few years, it has not been. It's been so low and clear that they're so ultra spooky. And it's not that you can't get it done, but it's one of the only times that I see trout actually spooking from my fly line, casting in the air, even when I think I'm as discreet as I possibly can be. And I mean, every footfall just seems to spook trout too. And hey, maybe I can't meet that challenge, I guess. And maybe someday I will. But to me, it's become less enjoyable the last few years, whatever. And I'm looking forward to having even a regular water year where I can kind of get back into that. And maybe I'm making excuses too, because like I said, life is just a lot busier, and I haven't tried it in the last few years as much either. And the times that I've gone, I've been a little bit disappointed. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Like Matt, what you're talking about, those couple days in Yellowstone and the backcountry, I need to do that. And I can think of exactly where I need to go do it. And I might camp, or I might, now I have a 4Runner, I might just do it in the back of my 4Runner.
Sure.
Take my dog. That was another thing, man. That's why I fish those small streams too. I've often told you just the connection I have with that border collie, named him Dylan, that he really helped me kind of find good purpose in my life. It kind of took me on a good path in life. I was responsible for him and so on. But he also drew me back into the woods. I started hiking a lot, and right away I was like, why am I hiking? I need a fly rod. Let's go. Sure. And he loved that so much. He didn't care for it when I would just kind of, I'll fish a bigger river where you're not covering much water, relatively speaking. Because I think what we're all talking about is you're fishing a river that's 10, 15, maybe 20 feet wide, maybe 30 is starting to be not a small river. But anyway, you're fishing these small streams, and we're wading upstream. You could wade downstream, but you're covering water. You're not standing in one spot for very long, and you can cover literally miles of water in a day. Dylan loved that. And I mean, he just loved it. He hungered for it. And when we do it a couple days in a row, I mean, I just never saw him happier. And I'm definitely looking forward to getting back into that, getting River, my Australian Shepherd now, and getting him into that a lot more than I am right now.
Cool. I said, just listening to you talk about all that, it just makes you want to embrace that and do it as much as possible. And if you're listening and you're young and don't have all these responsibilities that the Troutbitten crew's yapping about,
do it now.
Encourage you to do it now, and take the road less traveled, and it can definitely be rewarding for forever, right? Dom, you're holding on to experiences you've had for a long time, and likewise I am as well. And those experiences are valuable.
Whether it's after a fishing trip or at a backyard fire, you can bet the Troutbitten crew has a case of New Trail Broken Heels along with us. It's honestly our favorite beer. This hazy IPA is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is a keeper. New Trail beer is proudly brewed in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and delivered cold to your favorite craft beer retailer every week. At New Trail, it's not about being the best angler. It's about getting out there. So enjoy nature's moments and reward yourself for a day well fished with New Trail Broken Heels. It's Troutbitten's favorite beer. You guys know that, is it a book maybe? The book title is Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And now they say, I mean, there's even Everything I Need to Know I Learned by watching Star Wars and everything. I said, Everything I Need to Know I Learned on small stream trout water.
Love it.
And I feel like that's, and Matt, you said fish in these waters can really set you up for the future.
Sure.
And not just the experiences and stuff, but I'm saying technically it will make you a good angler. You cannot get away from, you have to develop good casting. You can't get away from it on a small stream. There is no forgiveness. You must be able to form tight loops no matter what your system is. You have to be able to punch it in there. You have to be accurate. There's no forgiveness on these small stream waters. And it will teach you how to read water, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Austin.
Yeah. I was going to say, think about how much we talk about fishing to tight targets, whether it's streamer fishing or nymphing or dry fly fishing. What else emphasizes having to fish to tight targets and really quick drifts as well than small stream fishing? I mean, you get one chance. Put that fly exactly where you want it on the first try, get a good clean drift, take it out, move on.
That's right. A couple steps.
But
that's right.
It all translates. And once you kind of get used to that environment, then you go out onto a bigger stream or a bigger piece of water, it's like, oh wow, now I'm really comfortable. I'm really dialed in. And you can keep building upon those same principles. And you're not all over the place because you're used to keeping things tight and close and fast.
Yeah.
And just the building blocks.
Building blocks are huge. And I will say that one misconception with small stream fishing, at least from my experience, is the fish will eat anything.
Oh,
and I think some folks going into the backcountry or into some of these small streams have false expectations about what the reality is. And I tell people, I'm like, look, just because it's a small stream and the fish may not have seen many flies doesn't mean if there's a very strong hatch, you shouldn't fish that pattern. So it should teach you, entomology and proper fly selection. And sure, you can get the right situation where you can toss pretty much, you feel like, about anything and the fish will eat. But from my experience, that hasn't always been the case, especially out here. I feel like the cutthroats have been, if they're eating grasshoppers, well, they don't want to Adams. They want a grasshopper. So somebody could just pretend like, oh, I just need an Adams for this mountain stream and not have success. You still need to approach it thinking properly, so to say.
Yeah, I feel like you can approach it in many different ways with many different tactics, but those tactics still need to be good. I will say they don't have to be super precise. Or we talk all the time about getting perfect drifts because these trout are really selective. There's definitely more willing fish. You'd agree with that, right, Matt?
Absolutely, especially willing to eat a dry fly.
Right on. Yes, you can prospect with a dry fly, and you don't see risers. You just prospect in the water. Yeah, they're certainly more willing, and yet I've just had the experience hundreds of times where I am using one fly, and then I switch to another. I'm like, oh, that made a difference. It might be like switching to your hopper, like you're saying there, Matt. And so you'll catch them, but boy, if you continue to try to solve the mystery, it's not like there's no puzzle out there. We talk about one of the things we enjoy about fishing in general is we're out there to solve the daily puzzle. There's still a puzzle. And you can still get, it's what water type are they sitting in and how many. For me, I remember, especially when I was exploring new waters, our fish commission used to list class A, B, C, and D. And now they have just a wild reproduction list. And then there's also class A list. Fair enough. And I used to explore the C and D waters. And there were still plenty of fish in there. I noticed that I kind of needed to find, again, the areas that they were sitting in, which isn't unusual at all. That's kind of what we do day to day. And yet in those class A small stream waters, they were really in a lot of different places. Right time of the year and all that too. You got to have the right water flows. For the most part, they're not that selective. And that's kind of part of the fun of it, a big part of the fun of it.
Yep.
A more pure experience.
Absolutely.
That brings up another question I have. Seasonality wise, like you take a brook trout stream in June or July and those fish are pretty willing, they're eager to eat a dry fly.
Yeah.
And you go back the same time in February when there's snow melting into the stream and it's frigid cold and you think, man, there's no fish in this stream.
Yeah.
But there are. Sometimes those small streams, be it whatever's in them, can be the most challenging to fish for me in the dead of winter versus some of our bigger limestoners.
I know.
You guys have the same experience?
I have. I lived in a mountainous region in southwest Pennsylvania and ended up having cabin fever at times and would go explore those same type streams you're talking about, Austin. Yeah. And, we'd have limited success on woolly buggers, just kind of like slow stripping woolly buggers in the deeper pools. But I've never had the same type of catch rate success that I did in the summer. And I think it was more of a different experience in the winter. It's still it's a different one, and it's all awesome just the same way summer is, and even more so it's that lonely winter feeling that I would seek. And you guys know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
The summer would always add in the catch enjoyment, but the winter, I always joked, if you saw someone blue lining in the winter, man, they're looking for something, not the fish.
I like that.
That's a great point.
The lonely man in the winter fishing.
Yeah. The winter for me, winter small stream fishing. Again, I keep talking about going north of here and fishing all those systems up there. It is slow. Austin, Josh and I went up. Maybe I think it was last winter. At the most, it was 2 winters ago. And I think between the two of us, caught like 3 fish. And I feel like every one of them was an accident. Didn't get anything going. And it's just because the waters are so cold.
Yeah. And
I don't think anybody can go up there and just, here, I got to figure it out. I don't think there's anything to figure out. I think they're just sitting tight. We've talked about that, on the winter skills series, Austin, you and I did quite a bit on like water temperatures are a big deal. In freestone streams, you can't really force feed them.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff obviously freezes over, Oh, yeah. You got to watch out for that too. I don't know. It's a lot different in the winter versus the spring, summer, fall. Hey, anything else, guys? What do we have? What do we miss?
Just a follow up from Austin's question about why these places don't get more famous. And as I've had time to kind of think about it, we can all agree, right? The average angler might, if they're lucky, spend a dozen days out on the water in a year, right? If that. And, it's uncomfortable to think you're going to spend, you as in these anglers, are going to spend one of those days doing something they're not comfortable with. And I'm a firm believer in that. They're going to go to what's known and what everybody talks about. And I'm not necessarily even bashing them for that.
Yeah, that's
right?
not bad.
I mean, you got 10 days to fish and you want to go to the stuff you're familiar with, that's okay. But I think that leads into why these small streams will never get that much steam or that crowded, because I do think it attracts a certain angler, right? And I think, everybody listening, if, they want to do something different this year, I mean, that's one thing I think we all could agree. Go try that. Do what Dom's saying. Drive up to a campground in a state game land or a forest and just take the day and explore solo on one of these blue lines. And we're not talking like, the ones that a dirt road follows. We're talking about one that requires some map navigation, and off the beaten path type thing. That's the experience I think that we're talking about. And maybe it rewards that individual, maybe it doesn't, but I think any serious fly fisherman should have that experience at least a handful of times during their angling career.
And you might fall in love with it too.
Yeah. There's no question, right? I mean, there's a reason we love it.
Yeah, man, I think small stream fishing is very much like night fishing. People are interested in it, but they won't very much go do it. And that has to do with time. It's very difficult to find the time to actually go night fishing very much and learn something. It's the opposite of when you're supposed to be, out there fishing. Night fishing is intriguing. It's captivating to people. I see the response on the articles and the podcasts we've done. Like, people are interested in it. Same thing here. People like the idea of small stream fishing. And yet, again, if you're only out there 10 or maybe 20 days a year, you're afraid to waste the time. And that's very fair. Like, I understand that. You're trying to do the thing that you think, well, I'm sure the trout are going to be here. And they're right there. And that's where this other guy's parked and he's fishing over there. I'll go, 100 yards below him and fish because I know there's fish in here. Or I fished it before, my buddy fished it. I'm not saying you always want to do the easy thing, but you want to do kind of the for sure thing. You want to take some of those variables out and go like, well, I know the fish are here and I know how the fly shop said that I should be able to catch them and here's the patterns. So I'm going to fish here. And there is some, I don't know if it's fear, some hesitation to go fish the small stuff and to be an explorer and who the things we're talking about. But if you fish long enough, I think everybody that I know they feel that draw. They feel that pull into those small streams. And it is for all the reasons we started out talking about, the solitude and that purity of experience, because you want to be an explorer, because you like hiking and, catching the wild fish. All those things will draw you into it. And if you feel that draw, I'd say go get it,
Sure.
Yeah.
Well said.
Hey, Austin, will you read us out?
Love to. So remember, the Troutbitten Project is a free resource for all anglers. The Troutbitten website hosts over 1,000 articles with endless stories, commentaries, tactics, tips, and more. Find what you like through the top menu and through the search page. Navigate by way of the categories and the tags too. Be sure to find the Troutbitten YouTube channel, currently featuring the Troutbitten Tip Series in collaboration with Wilds Media. These are short, useful, and unique tips for your fly fishing life. Thank you for listening to the Troutbitten Podcast. Please give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and leave a comment, because it really helps. Till next time, friends, fish hard, enjoy the day, and find your life on the water.
Hey now.
Oh my goodness.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Giddy up.
Giddy up.
Hey, this is Mr. Trevor. It's Doctor.
Hey now.